So how sustainable is sustainability? Huh? So let's make it interactive. So at least people see me here so they will not sleep. Rethinking packaging and the waste and the circular economy. How important it is. We have heard of circular economy being the focus, and our friends in the earlier panels have stolen our questions and answers. So we don't know really what to ask, but don't worry, we'll take it. Reuse, recycle, rethink, react, responsible, but most important, respecting the waste. Circularity in action begins with you and me. This is the ice and fire story. The ice and the fire both need sustainability because we are at a juncture in the world where nothing is sustainable. In the sense, our resources are stretched, our sustainability is at question. And one has to appreciate that when we talk of sustainability, sustainability will come at a cost. Sustainability will not come on an empty stomach. We had to push you inside after the food to make this session. That is sustainability. Without much in taking time about talking myself, I would like to begin directly. The lady with the Colgate smile, transparency, accountability, collaboration, and social responsibility. She believes that, right? Your LinkedIn profile says that, madam.
Yes, I do. ESG report will be out soon as well, so there is no accountability, transparency, sab aa jayegi.
So, what role as a biggest consumer name in the smile industry? What role the consumers play in the success of a circular economy? So we talked of a circular economy, but the success story in the packaging sector and the consumer. Your views on that, ma'am?
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thanks to Business World for inviting all of us. Oh, sorry. I was called gunthroat when I was in school, so I assumed I could go like that only. Thank you so much to Business World for inviting us, and thank you so much, and to everybody else here. I think the consumer goods industry and products like us have a slightly more larger role to play as compared to probably people who are selling it to, say, B2B. Why? Because the consumer using it is also responsible for whatever happens. Now the question is, should the onus be on producers or should it be on consumers? Because ultimately we can do our part, which is ensure that we have recyclability, or our products, for example, you design something, you look at LCA, but after that, ensuring that it goes to the right grave or not go to the grave is something that the consumer decides. I'll just pick up the whole plan on what we do as a company, also with toothpaste tubes. Like most of us know that the plastic that goes into, say, whatever we use in terms of detergents or others are already in a path where they're already recycled. The first thing is to do recyclables, right? Your product has to be recyclable. All our toothpaste tubes, Colgate was the first one globally to, get into this. We made it open source so that competition could pick it up. Unfortunately, they haven't picked it up. But theek hai, we are largest market. Say just in India, for example, about 5 billion odd tubes are produced of various sizes. How much of them are currently recyclable? Probably, I think the one that we actually make. This year we've hit 100%, so all are. That's the first step. So we've done that. How are we educating our consumers? I think the first thing to do is to ensure that, and so the learning we got from a partner, we were working on circularity. They said, the badging of recycle is very small on your tubes. So we increased it this year itself, like this financial year is when we got it ahead, made it bigger. So that's one way. The next thing is, we're now looking at seeing how it can go back into our products or to something else. Do consumers pay for sustainable products? I think everybody says yes, see? It's because we'll say, of course, I want to eat organic food. I want to do this. Ek baar khareed liya, do baar khareed liya. And especially all these things, mentally, we are like, it comes with a premium, right? Do they continue? Maybe no. I'm sure a lot of you here must have heard and read about the say-do gap, right? Across the world, consumers say, around 60-70% consumers or even 80% consumers in countries say that, oh, of course, we're ready to pay for sustainability, we're ready to pay for green, we're ready to pay for recyclables. But the number of people who land up paying consistently is somewhere in the 20% range, right? But that does not mean companies should, what should we do? We should ensure that our operations work in such a manner that you can control costs at your end and you don't have to pass that cost on to a consumer, right? And that is the real responsibility is what I feel. But consumers also, I think, I was at a college recently, so this is a much more elderly gathering, which just today I was feeling something, I said, we have to go years together to pick the year that we were all born in. But I was telling them that while today, a lot of people say today's generation is very, very conscious, you know, they're like, they will do things better. No. I was asking those college kids, when you go to a restaurant with your parents, who wastes food more? These like, yeah, we do, right? Our mothers, our grandmothers, our fathers have all been still doing, you know, milk packet mein pani dal ke, you use everything, or you reuse bottles that you buy something, goes back to the fridge. I think they kind of waste more. I think that's where it starts. Individually, we can do our part, but also ensure that your ecosystem is there. But I think consumers play a large role, but the bigger role is with corporates to ensure that we can help them. Yeah.
Gen Z. दिखाते हैं करते हैं और हैं the name Kalia, with due respect to you, sir, is a respected name in the film industry.
Yeah.
In the film industry, Bollywood, Kalia. But this Kalia is very kind. The sweet taste of purity. Bisleri. And Shri Ganeshji brings a lot of experience and that sweetness to sustainability. So how do you define the circular packaging and the roadblocks you see from the linear to the circular? And second part is the impact as regarding the packaging of water. How do you see that, sir?
Well, thank you, Business World, for giving me an opportunity to be here today, the panel discussion. Thank you, Samit sir, and thank you others. So we talk on two aspects, the linear economy and the circular economy. Okay. So the linear economy, if I talk about in a packaging to say, is like a single-use plastics. Use of packaging material, after consumption, dispose it. Okay. So we are not taking it again to a recycling systems. Okay. That means it is used once, afterwards it's not used again. But when we talk about the circular economy and circular packaging, the packaging itself is designed such a way that it can be recycled again and again. That's where the beauty comes like. Okay. So this circular economy has been transformed over last 10-15 years across the globe. And in India also it has been transforming and then going in a long, bigger way, like to say like. If I wanted to take an example of a plastics, we have 7 different types of plastics. So I take the number 1 plastics, that is PET, which you know very well, which we all know very well. The PET bottles used for beverage applications can be 100% recycled because it's a mono material. So mono material means it's not having any mix of other plastics. It can be recycled n number of times. Okay. So that is point number 1. Point number 2, by recycling, what are the benefits? If I am not going to reuse, I am going to use and then discard it. That means the consumptions of plastics, the virgin plastics required, will be mounting up like a mountain. If I wanted to use this PET beverage containers again and again, that means the quantum of virgin plastic is going to come drastically. Very drastically like. So this is very important aspect when I talk about this circular economy like. So when we talk about circular packaging, the packaging whichever the industry is going to design should ensure that the packaging material which they are taking into for the design purpose for the product, filling their product, should be 100% recyclable. Point number 2 is, addition to that, this packaging material should be also reusable. because recycling is the next process. Can you reuse again and again? Okay, so we have a very beautiful example. If I wanted to quote our 20-liter jar. So from 1990s, we are a pioneer in using this jar again and again. That means it's a fantastic example of a circular economy like. So instead of discarding that jar, we have been using for multiple rotations. So if I talk about the tune of impact for the 20-liter jars, which we had last year, by reusing, we were able to reduce 42,000 metric tons of virgin plastics. Okay, so if you are going to use the jar, every time a single-use jar, we are not able to reduce the virgin plastics. So other impacts are, I'll just give a simple example. Maybe the data are known to very less people over here. If I wanted to make 1 kg of PET, that is the resin which we use for making these bottles, it liberates 2.15 kg of CO2 for the virgin PET. If I am going to recycle the same PET, it is going to liberate only 0.43 kg of CO2. That means the beauty of recycling is 80% of the carbon emission will be reduced. Okay. Second important aspect is when I am going to make 1 kg of PET. Okay. And if I compare to 1 ton of PET, that is going to save, when I am going to recycle, 5,700 kilowatt of power energy, which means that is a big tune. So similarly, there are lots of saving with respect to the landfill, respect to the oil saving and water saving. And one more important aspect is when we go for circular packaging, sir, we are reducing the virgin plastic consumption. Also, the plastic is going to come again to the system. That means no plastic is going to go for land or ocean. That means the entire things will be taken care because plastic has been a very miraculous material. Let us see that how wisely we use it.
Thank you. Coming to Naveen ji, bringing happiness with sustainability. His smile says that. And how important, going back to the design, how important is the role of design in minimizing the packaging waste, and what design strategies should organizations adopt to reduce the waste?
Right. First of all, thanks to the BW Business World for giving this opportunity, and thanks to you, Samir, for raising this important topic of bringing design into the concept. So first of again, let me introduce myself. I am representing Innomotics, though the name is new. Formerly, it was Siemens large drive business, which is now known by Innomotics. And what we do, we make motors and large drive, which runs large scale industries. It also power the refineries. It powers the petroleum sector. It powers the steel plants, cement industry, any industry. So you find huge motors running on these heavy engineering structures. So it's basically the Innomotics run engine, or we'll say the bandwidth is from high voltage to medium voltage to this small starting from low voltage business. So to control these, we also have the drives which controls these motors. So it was just giving you introduction of the business which we represent. So coming on to the design, so I would say design is something which is the DNA starting point. And when we talk about the starting point, so I would say what we need, what we expect from the product, the basics should be inbuilt in the design itself, because later on it becomes very difficult to control the things, and in the end it lands up in the landfills or somewhat unable to recycle. So the best thing is what we can do in the design itself. The things also reflects what we have inherently and what our earlier panelists have also told, let's go back to our roots. We have the legacy of conserving. So we conserve more, whether it's resource, whether whatever way you take it. So we have lost that pace and we are more into consumer driven things, and that way we need to reflect all these features into the product itself. So first important thing is the durability of the product. So what material shall we select to make the product durable? The life stays longer. It goes up to 20 years, 25 years, and again. The second thing is the repairability. Again, many a times, maybe everyone of us is facing the same issue. When nowadays gadget stops working, it's something called use and throw. So earlier days we have seen everything was repairable. So we again need to go back to that concept and make our product such that that module itself, that particular which has the problem, get replaced or repaired instead of throwing all the equipment as a trash. So the third thing is the efficiency. Again, that's what is running us. The energy efficiency, the kind of product used, the technology which we use, and I'll simply take an example to reduce the size of the motor. When it's just an example, our R&D team was thinking that it's a customer need. He needs efficiency improvement as well as the size should also be shrinking. So then it was a challenge to cool the motors and to heavy structures. We need to have that gap building should be there. So what's the alternative for that cooling? So then a lot of teams work on to the heat sink, designing of the heat sink, and that's how they started evolving a new design in which the heat sink itself is extended, and that way the size of motor was reduced, and in that size reduction the material consumption was reduced. In material consumption, apart from that, packaging was reduced, and ultimately reaching out to the customer, the transportations and others. So it has a long impact onto the emission if this thing is inbuilt in the design itself. And I would say the important aspect is many SKU the organizations keep launching. So the important thing is one part should be applicable if it can be used in other SKUs also, rather than making different SKU or different spares. So that usability of the parts can be another thing which the organizations are looking at. And I think most of the things will be leading to a reduction in the waste and also design. I would say one important thing is a lot depends on the customer. I'll take two examples. Like here in the organization, I'm catering business to business scenario, but when earlier organization, we were also catering B2C side. So that customer side is directly to the customer, not at all ready to pay for efficiency. There, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency needs to put the, that we call it Danda system, कि भाई 5-star लाना है तो लाना है, or all those things, star labeling and other things. Whereas here B2B, the business is demanding. So that's an important thing which is driving these innovations. The organizations look in that way. So in both the organization scenario, in B2B, the R&D team itself is working on because the customer is demanding. So they need to reduce the size, efficiencies, increase all those things. Whereas in B2C, the team itself is struggling. They're saying, yaar, customer nahi mang raha hai, we will be losing the market. How is it? So we as a consumer, we need to ask for these sustainable product. We need to make our society aware. It's for our future. So let's don't think of these small pennies, and in the end, the efficient products work wonderfully, and it's a lifelong product.
Thank you. 20 years at Capgemini, and she's seeing the past and the future, getting the future you want. That's the tagline of Capgemini, if I'm not wrong. And how can business best measure and assess their carbon footprint in a circular economy, and what matrices are important, and technology solutions, how can they help?
So when we are talking about the measurement, so lot of the, since morning we have heard about, it's a lot, entire the measurement and the reporting is quite a lot, it's a regulatory driven. So if there is a regulatory compliance that need to be met by a company, that is where that the companies will actually measure. So the first challenge that the most of the organizations are facing is the data sitting into multiple ecosystem. It's still not as matured as an ERP or the financial accounting system, but we are seeing more and more like the need of a formal accounting system for the carbon measurement also, be it a circularity or a product carbon footprint or a regulatory reporting. And that is the biggest challenge that the most of the organization facing, the getting access to the data that is required for that measurement reporting. And that need to be really solved with multi-pronged approach. There has to be processes in place to capture at the source first. Then there needs to be system in place so that you can extract it for the auditability and for the reporting purpose. And then there is an entire ecosystem of the support ecosystem that need to be developed. And that is, when it comes to the only circularity, you can look at it as some of the recent KPIs that you look at it as the percentage of the recycling material that has been used in a product, or water or energy efficiency, how much of the intake and consumption that is happening, the recoverability of the material from the product, what is the repairability and the refurbishment like easiness of doing that. So a lot of those measurements that are coming up, but it's important to really for companies to look at it and they need to understand this as any other KPI. And once that is there, then only that the more efforts would be made to actually transparently measure and monitor and report against that.
The gentleman sitting here, thinking beyond, innovating and simplifying, that's Abhishek.
Thank you, sir.
And why is the recycle? You come with a lot of knowledge and talking of the plastics and packaging. Why is the recyclability of packaging a crucial element in circularity?
Yeah, sure, sir. So firstly, thank you to the business world for inviting, and thank you, Samir sir, for taking up this question. And my co-panelist has also given a lot of input for that question answer. But let me start how it is important for circularity. We oftenly use this word circularity, but what does it mean? We need to understand. So there are two aspects to the circularity. Everybody needs to come into same platform to understand that. First is that there is an environmentally sound management of the waste. So as you started, you said plastic is a miraculous material, and I always say to everybody, plastic is not a problem, waste is a problem. And we don't call paper as a waste today, but plastic we do. Yeah, but we also use paper as a packaging today. So yeah, there are certain myths, and that's where the plastic has been made a monstrous problem for the waste. But coming to circularity, there's one part of it which talks about that waste should not be channelized to the landfill, and that is where a lot of numbers, what you mentioned, that how much waste from the company has been recycled, has been reused, or sustainably been disposed of. Because we have also seen in a lot of news that there are fires, there are methane gas emissions from the landfills, which is far more harmful than the carbon emissions what we do in our plants. Another important aspect of circularity is using back the material in the packaging, which reduces our reliance on the virgin material, which means extraction, mining of those virgin material. Now coming to the recyclability, let me give you an example, two examples which will clarify, and I'll take example of my co-panels here simply, because they have done a lot of work in that area. First is, let's say, PET bottles. Today in India, PET bottles are being collected more than 90%. It doesn't end up to the landfill. There is an informal system which collects. There's a whole ecosystem which is dependent on this PET waste recycling, and Bisleri is doing amazing work, which I can vouch for that. Yeah. And that is where we say the recyclability design is so crucial. So if the product, let's say another example, food packaging, let's say chips packets or some MLP packaging, wherein today you would see all those plastic packets being thrown because that's not being getting recycled at scale. Why? Because there is no recyclability, scalability, and there is an aftermarket for those recycled materials. Right? That is where when Colgate decided to convert their MLP tubes into a monomer tubes, that helps for the market to pick up. But yeah, there are still challenges wherein first step done by Colgate as a leader, but going ahead there is a market for collection, their sustainable recycling, as well as using it back to the packaging. That is where the whole closed loop cycle of recycling and circularity achieves. And a very interesting thing, like today we are talking about packaging, but I also would want to address saying that the circularity doesn't start and end at packaging. It goes much more beyond. If we take an example of EPR, which clearly does this as a regulatory mandate, not only in packaging, but also in electronics, but also in ALVs, used oil lubricants, there is batteries, and there is ALV also coming in from 2025, and two more coming soon in next year, which is non-ferrous, textiles, construction and demolition waste. So yeah, this circularity and recyclability, everything is linked, and it starts with design of the packaging. If the choice what we are making, the polymers what and the product materials we are choosing for our packaging, and how we are designing, keeping in mind the post end of life of those things, there will be change. And that is where it will automatically leads towards more recycling, less waste going to the landfills, a reduction on the landfills, and ultimately there is an ecosystem of circularity we can see. That's what we see today in a lot of developed countries like Europe, wherein they have made a mandate now for designing their packaging as per their recycling assessment methodology, which is unique on itself. And I heard some of the co-panels in other session of TVS, they said they have designed their components for their vehicle in a way which are reusable or recyclable at scale. So this is
more than 90%.
Exactly. And those are the things which help. So I really feel proud to work with them and the initiative that they take. But yeah, this is just a starting for circularity, as we say.
Thanks. Yeah. Madam Shilpashree, an important point which I would like to ask you. Does legislation support, the legislation mandate to the transition to a circular economy in packaging?
Yes, I think legislative guidelines actually help companies move towards the right direction. But also what I want to bring to the notice is that we spoke about a lot of things, right? One is start with what's called, like he gave an example of I used to work for a company called Alstom, and we made trains and metros. But, you can imagine the size that we make. 98% of the product, and of course those would live for like 60, 70 years at least, was actually retraceable and recoverable in terms of, those components. And so eco-design in any form, I think, is the start. Next is what you do in terms of, like the package and the periphery on that. Then comes the consumer, who has to be conscious and ensure that it is segregated, etc. Then, a very important point what he said. Like say, for example, today, the biggest problem for us is that anybody who's picking, if you understand a rack picker who picks stuff, is not really picking up a tube today because he or she is not aware कि इसके लिए पैसा मिलेगा या नहीं मिलेगा. Like newspaper तो सब लोग रद्दी तो आज तक कोई waste होता ही नहीं है, right? So there is that large ecosystem where waste is segregated. उसके बाद who's going to pick it to send it back for recycling is one whole huge eco, okay? Which I think is still not very developed for a lot of products. PET I think is up there because they started early as well, and visible. A lot of companies came together. The volume is massive. And this is where I'm saying that, and after that, of course, HDPE, for example, but ours don't. And this today, we are struggling on that. Then is the next stage where the ecosystem, like companies like Bisleri and the likes came together to ensure that they became big. So then people are picking it. Next, you find somebody to recycle it for you, which is also a challenge today. Because circularity, needs somebody who's able to recycle it, make those pallets, then decide how much of it comes back. But recently, I think somebody already touched upon the EPR norms, which I think is a good thing because then, companies are moving towards this becoming conscious. You have to declare, you need to do it. The next step is we've got newer rules now saying how much of virgin plastic needs to go, how much of your own plastic that has gone into recycling or pelletization needs to come back into your... I think the best mode, for example, if I'm Colgate and I'm saying, mera tube agar recycle hota hai, can I use that back into my tubes? It's a long way to go, but at least can it go back? We really don't want it to go back into those black buckets, right? But which value chain, kahan pe fit hota hai? You reach the highest level that you can at least at first go. I think those are the challenges we all face, and legislation actually will help because it will then guide and help companies to come together, the ecosystem to build around this. Because when legislation comes in, you also see that it somewhere leads to business minds coming together and saying there is an opportunity there. Let's put our brains and monies together to capture. So I think that's where legislation actually helps, so that the ecosystem can actually build around these pieces.
My timer here says time's up. Press delete to reset, but we will not do that. You'll have to give me 10 more minutes. Our panel name is long: Rethinking Packaging Waste and the Circular Economy in Action. We have to complete little action, and you robbed us 10 minutes of our time. You made it 30.
Yes, they reset it between.
So, action hai na?
Can't really counter that, of course, but sir, I mean,
5
the best,
minutes.
yeah, sure.
Please. So, madam, what are the technology solutions that Capgemini is addressing in packaging and circular economy?
So when we talk about packaging, there are multiple areas of packaging where technology can help. Right? It starts from the designing of the packaging. So once we look at it as okay, we talked about the recyclable material. So overall packaging itself, approximately 9% of the overall product cost goes into the packaging. And as you reduce the packaging, it automatically reduces the cost. But if you reduce it to the recyclable material, it may and may not. But we need to look at the practical aspect of also that in the lab, a packaging is really looking at very sustainable, but when it goes into truck, not many units are getting fit into that, then it may not be that sustainable. So technologies that actually do that designing and the simulation of the various option is one of the areas that we work with a lot of the customers. The second area is the material itself. That identifying the material, we're using the data-driven R&D, what is the kind of the alternate material which can actually have the same property, durability of the current packaging material. That is the second area. There are a lot of the technologies, the solutions that are there that we work with a lot of the customers. So these are the, like when you're talking about the packaging designing, material and the primary, secondary and the tertiary material design. So all of these, we do have actually our packaging center of excellence in Morocco, where the people are only focusing on the packaging related IT solutions. And all of the, whether the AI, ML and those technologies are being leveraged to create the solutions and grow in that area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clock is again ticking. Last 40 seconds for each panelist. Can I begin with you, Abhishek? Your words of wisdom and advice.
So thinking circular while we starting to procure anything and use in our packaging, that is what. And as a consumer, we need to be aware what we are doing. So one small thing for all the consumer to segregate is where this starts. So because one of the challenge in the whole recycling and sortation and circularity is consumer behavior, where they mix waste. And believe me, with the data, with the things we are working with all the companies, and you know better, sir, than me, the biggest challenge there. So one thing, if all of you start from today itself, segregation, that will make a lot of change. Thank you.
Aao kuch alag kare.
Yeah.
Madam.
He actually stole, I think I also said that let's start at home, let's start with ourselves. But then I'll probably bring in another aspect saying, because a lot of us here are decision makers, a lot of us here have the power of saying, you know what, if we go alone as one company, we'll probably get to the headlines, but might not reach the kind of scale in the time that the need of the hour is. So if we could collaborate better and think lesser on, am I going to be on the headline, or is he going to be on the headline, or is she going to be on the headline? Saying if we could think, because some of them are doing excellent work, if we could learn from those, and I think organizations like yours should actually bring us together and say, you know what, this is happening. Do you want to come together as a consortium and approach this? Probably we'll be able to reach faster and better as well. I think so that's something that we should take a call. I know it's not easy because we all are ultimately corporate coolies, right? None of us run our own organizations like him, but to be able to tell the board that, no, I think this is how we should do it. To be able to tell your leadership, I think, is in our hands. And if we could do that a little more confidently and better, we'll definitely reach higher and faster. And India has got one of the best. I think we are very good in terms of, you know, plastic collection and segregation as compared to a lot of other countries. It's just that, you know, at the end, what we do about it and how we put it back into the
I'm
system
not a
is one thing.
politician, neither I aspire to be one, but let me put it the political language. Sabka saath, sabka vikas.
Excellent, yeah.
Ganesh ji, your words.
Sir, it's on the individuals, it's responsibility to say, like, even though we tell that no, the corporates or the brands needs to do, but it lies with the individuals. It starts from the individual. So it's a collaborative efforts to say, like, individual, the brands, the corporates, and the government also. Without that, it cannot happen. Rightly said, first is the behavioral changes, very important, because each and every individual needs to change their behavioral things, like how the other panelists mentioned about paper. How do we keep the paper and then give it back and then get the money after selling this paper, the scrap paper, or to the Radiwala? Same, we should also demarcate and keep this plastic in a particular place and give it for the recycling purposes. One is the behavioral change. Second is the source segregations. The very important thing is, if you are not going to segregate in the source and then keep the proper material in the right compartment, then again it's going to have a challenge. Third is the infrastructure. Even though you segregate, keep the dry and wet waste separate or the plastic separate, is there a government mechanism tool to take this and then give it to a particular place for recycling? The fourth is, do we have the technology to get all this thing to be converted, recycled, to make a useful products? So there are n numbers of things involved in that. And I appreciate the government policies and regulations which has been there in the last 8 years, to say, like from 2016. The EPR evolved, and there were 10 amendments happened after that. So you see that it has moved with the plastic, then it has moved to plastic category, then it has moved to category 4, 5 also, then it has moved to reuse, recycle content, everything. But it's a big drastic change.
You know, the power of five panelists, and they come together and they set the system. Huh? Sir.
Yes, Sameerji, I'll go with you. Sabka saath, sabka vikas. So in that say, I would say, through EPR, we have been able to pass on our products for recycling to the recycler, but getting them back from the recyclers to the manufacturer for making parts is a very heavy task and challenging task, because the refinement, the quality of the recycling is very low. So every one of us needs to join together, and it applies for across industry. So we need to really support, collaborate with each other, and especially we need to handhold the recyclers, make our R&D facilities available or support them through those testing facilities, so that through that hand-holding, the refinement, the quality or the composition which we really look at can be achieved, and then only the circular economy will be in a true spirit and सबका विकास will be possible.
मैंने तो बोला कि पार्टी नहीं करना है, लेकिन आप तो मैंने मन की बात बोली कि we should form a circular party of India. Madam, the last word.
Yeah, I think most of the things are covered. The only one last thing that I would want to add, it is, as you said, that okay, technology, ecosystem, and the technology and the infrastructure it's there, the technology is there, we were talking during the lunchtime, there are a lot of the companies working on it. I think this requirement is to scale. So, and scaling require the financing as well in the earlier session that we were talking about. So those need to come together to scale up so that the cost, when you scale, then the cost decreases. Then we need to reach to that stage where the green and the non-green have got the same cost, so that the consumers don't need to make that decision based on the cost. So that's where could be our like nirvana, I would say.
How green, how clean, how rethinking our economy, that is circularity in action. That is the last 3 words that I would like to thank my panelists with. And before my host give out something, I would like to hand over something to remind you of. I'll tell you what this is. Ganesh has already had this. So this is circularity in action. This is a phone stand made from recycled chocolate wrappers. Circularity, thought and put into action. Thank you.